Hello friends, welcome back. Last week I shared details about 3 of the older generations. Thank you for joining me again. Today is episode 140. I'm Kathy Rhodes, and today we're going to think differently about the youngest generations. Now, as a reminder, chances are you know someone in each of the generations that we talk about. So as I share some details, you may find that you connect with some of their characteristics, even though that's not your generation. This is normal. This is common. This is absolutely what we expect. We choose to hold on to generational tendencies because of the people who raised us. And we adapt to the tendencies of the younger generation because of the world we currently live in. Now, we are given a generation label based on the year that we were born. There are commonalities among people within your generation because of your experiences and the economy and technology. However, this label does not define us. We choose who we want to be, what we hold on to, and what we let go of. Now, much of the information that I'm going to share with you is from Tim Elmore's new book, A New Kind of Diversity, Making the Different Generations on Your Team a Competitive Advantage. I highly recommend the book. Really great read. Lots of content. It's almost like a resource guide. Well, I'm going to give you some little tidbits, okay? Now, all generations have strengths and weaknesses. All generations have things that we like about them and that we dislike about their habits, about their thinking. Please don't let these biases or irritations cloud your relationship with these wonderful people. Okay, take it into consideration and choose to collaborate based on each other's strengths. No more colliding, just collaboration. Is that fair? All right, if you didn't listen to the last episode, then I'll give you a quick reminder that each generation is shaped by shared experiences. These are like memorable events and milestones that happen in the world. Also media, messages, music, movies, television shows. Tragedies is another way that generations are shaped. And the economics of the world create this ginormous definition to the generations. All right, there's also heroes and villains, people that we imitate or people that we avoid. And of course, there's technology. There's always new technology, new devices, changing the way that we communicate. The final thing that shapes our generations are policies and values. This kind of goes back to the political structure of the world. It brings sense of justice. So keep this in mind. And as we dig into these younger 3 generations, we will be talking about many of these different categories. So during the last video, I talked about the silent generation, the baby boomers, and Gen X. Now we're going to talk about a generation born between 1981 and 1994. Here in 2023, they're between the ages of 29 to 42 years old, depending on how you look at these years and do the math. Okay, this generation is known as Gen Y. We're going to follow the alphabet. If we have Gen X, the next generation is Gen Y. These people are also known as the millennials. This is the largest generation to date. 80 million people in this generation. 50% of the workforce today is Gen Y. This is really the first generation also that is worldwide. Okay, it's not just an American generation. This is a worldwide generation. We have worldwide events that are happening to define the generation. So, who are some popular people in this generation? Well, if you watch any of the news, you know that Prince William is in the news quite often. He is a millennial. Tim Tebow, some sports athletes. These are people who are within this generation. Let's talk about what happened in their growing up years. Now, I just want to throw this out there that when we talk about what happened in their growing up years, we're not talking about the years they were born. Because the years they were born, well, just like the year you were born, I don't remember what happened the year I was born, but let's fast forward 10 years or so. That I remember. And that probably has some impact and influence in my life now today. So the worldwide event that really has influenced Gen Y is 9/11. The events of 9/11 were very impactful. And I had a little giggle in that comment because they were very impactful for everybody who was alive at that time. But those in the Generation Y, they were at that impactful moment of their life where they were young and influenced by what was happening. They understood, well, I don't know if anyone really understood why 9/11 happened, but they understood what was happening. They understood the magnitude of it. That has impacted them and stayed with them. You know, every person that you talk to in this Gen Y, they know where they were on September 11th. When those airplanes hit the Twin Towers. They know what school they were going to or what classroom they were in. They know what happened as this was all unfolding. Some other events that were very impactful for this generation were school shootings. Columbine was a big, well, it was like the first big school shooting that truly is memorable. Video games, the internet. I mean, all of this is so influential to this generation. Their attitude or behavioral style has this wide variety of definitions, wide variety of adjectives, let's say. Some people call Generation Y people very confident. Some people call them audacious. These young people appreciate diversity. They also have grown up in a way where life has been customized. I mean, think about music. Back in my day, we used to buy cassette tapes of whoever we wanted to hear, and you get what you get on those cassette tapes, right? I used to like the Bangles, and I wanted Walk Like an Egyptian. Well, I had to buy the whole cassette tape with all, 12 songs on it. I grew to like some others on that tape, but you know, a Generation Y, they just go out and download the actual song that they like. They would just go download Walk Like an Egyptian. They wouldn't get the whole cassette tape or CD or whatever we have today. So we can see how life is very customized. Go to any fast food restaurant. You have different packages that you can buy, right? I want a number one. I want to supersize it. We can customize, leave off the pickles, add extra ketchup. Can I get those with sweet potato fries instead of French fries? Life is very customized for a Gen Y. Now, their ideals, their ideal, I guess, focus is to focus on the mission of an organization, the mission of a product, the mission of a project. They love to know and understand the mission. And if they believe that mission as well, they're on board. Now, the millennials have also been called entitled. Everybody gets a trophy, right? They're very entitled in what they get, and they act like it too. This is a tough word. This is a tough word to say. It's also a tough word to receive. If you're a millennial, you may be offended by this word. I remember one time I was teaching a generation class, and after class, a young man, a very up-and-coming leader within this organization, came up to me and said, "I'm a millennial. I'm from that generation, Gen Y, and I'm starting to understand that we are being labeled with the word entitled. But until you explained what it really means, I didn't know there was a word to define my growing up years. I didn't know that everyone should not get a trophy. I didn't know that I really shouldn't get everything I've gotten. It's just how I knew life." Well, first of all, who raised them? Baby boomers and Gen X have raised Gen Y. We've created that entitlement. We're the ones who made sure everybody got a trophy. We're the ones who made sure our kids were signed up for 3 activities every season. We're the ones who gave and give to our kids. They really didn't know any different until we got frustrated and annoyed with it and gave it the adjective of entitled. That's not fair. That's not fair. We've created this habit. Okay, let's move past that, okay? Because these people give so much to a team. They have gifts that they bring to a team. First of all, they bring an energy. They bring an energy. They're a breath of fresh air. They're very social. Of course, there's social media, but they're also social from a people standpoint. They love their family. For these young families that are raising up the next generation, they have a desire to do things with the family, right? They're very tech savvy with all of the new apps and creations that are out there, and they're very optimistic. So this generation, what a value that they bring to our world. Like I said, 50% of the workforce is Gen Y. Well, because they are the largest generation, 80 million of them, right? So let's look at all the value that they bring. Let's look at their position within leadership as they are starting to change their role in their job, and they're moving into leadership. They want to learn. I teach a leadership academy, and most of the time the class is filled with people in the Generation Y. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to empower their people. Okay, let's go on to the next generation. After Gen Y, yep, you know it. We're going to follow the alphabet all the way through. Next, we've got Gen Z. These people are born between 1995 and 2012. And just a reminder, these years are rough, okay? Sometimes we can Google and find a few differential years before and after. So work with us here, okay? Generally, Gen Z is born between 1995 and 2012. So listen to this, they're between the ages of 11 and 28. These are your people who are graduating from high school, graduating from college. They're the youngest in the workplace today. They are your newest hires. These people are also known, Gen Z is also known as the internet generation. They're also known as the homelanders because this generation started about the same time that the Department of Homeland Security began. And unfortunately, they're also known as the coronials. Even though the pandemic, the coronavirus, is not their defining moment. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about some popular people who are in this generation. If you watch any movies, you might see Zendaya, okay? Tom Holland, he's the newest Spider-Man. These are Gen Zs. Another young Gen Zer is Greta Thunberg. She was the 2019 Person of the Year. Time magazine had her on the front cover. She's from Sweden, and she's an environmental activist. Well-spoken and very, very strong and bold toward her beliefs about our world and how we need to treat it. These are Gen Zers. Okay, so what happened in their growing up years? What is it that happened in our world that really has defined these young people? Well, these young people have survived 3 recessions, including the Great Recession of 2008. Okay? In 2008, these people were, maybe 7, 8, 10, 12 years old. And what happened then? Well, they were following in their older siblings' footsteps, going to different sports events and going to music practice and being involved in everything. But overnight, their parents came home and said, I can't finance this anymore. We just lost our jobs. We just lost our investments. You guys want those new soccer shoes? You got to figure out how to do it yourself. We need to worry about getting food on the table. So that was the Great Recession of 2008, but really their whole growing up years have had just kind of constant recessions. And it really plays into their attitudes, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But what else? What else has been in their growing up years? Well, shootings have continued, not just school shootings, all shootings. The pandemic, of course, has been very instrumental in their choices. There's been political polarization. There's lots of anxiety. It's just interesting to really look and analyze the difference between a Gen Z and a Gen Y. There's a lot of differences that have been a struggle for a Gen Zer. Now, here's some interesting statistics. It's estimated that Gen Z people spend 10 hours and 19 minutes a day using technology. Whoa, 10 hours and 19 minutes. This is all technology. It's not just the cell phone. It's also binge watching on Netflix. It's also computer use. It's also whatever other technology we have laying around like Alexa and Google and the smart devices. 10 hours, and I mean, that's my waking time. That's working time. That's a lot, right? This generation is also estimated to have 17 jobs in a lifetime. My grandparents had 1. My parents have maybe 2. Now, Gen Xers, they're actually estimated to have 9 jobs in a lifetime. So now we jump ahead 2 generations, and now we're jumping up to 17. Take a look at what's happening in our world. We have an employee shortage, and people can come and go quite frequently, and it doesn't affect their future job. 17 might not sound that little. Okay, so here's something else that's really, really kind of fun. Back when I was a kid, wow, do I sound old, right? But back when I was younger, there were like 3 stages of life stages, we'll call them. Okay, there was childhood, there was teenage years, and there was adulthood. And we became an adult when we were 18 years old. Easy as that. Well, now there's a few more stages. There's childhood, tween years between childhood and teenager years. So teenager is the next. Then young adult. Young adult is the age 18. Then we have kippers, adults, career changers, down-agers, and then, life moves on, right? But kippers is always that title that people say, what is that? If now age 18 means you're a young adult and something happens before you become an adult, it's called kippers. What kippers means is when these young people are graduated from college, they have a job, but they still live at home. You're not considered an adult until you move out of your parents' house. And roughly the average age of that is 30. By the way, things are really expensive these days. Gen Zers aren't stupid. Mom and dad have the extra space. They say, hey, you can live with us till you get your job going. We can eat out of mom and dad's refrigerator. Hello? Yes, please. And I got to admit, remember how the older generations created the entitled Gen Y? Well, we're also encouraging the kippers. We love our kids. We want them around more. If this means I get to see them, then okay, I'll open my basement to you. I guess there's good and bad for everything, right? Well, the heroes of Gen Y and Gen Z, I really didn't go into their heroes like I did of the older generations because they're not as wide known as the older generation heroes. Heroes of today are called influencers. And these influencers are influential in whatever it is you're interested in. So if you like to exercise, there's exercise influencers. If you like to video game, there's certain people you watch related to the games that you enjoy. If you like to cook or clean or organize or leadership, you're going to find influencers depending on what you're interested in. The heroes of today are more personal than they have been in the past. Well, what are the attitudes? What are the attitudes of a Gen Zer? Gen Zer's attitude is coping and hoping. That doesn't sound too positive. They're coping and hoping. Here's what it looks like. Many of these Gen Zers were in college when the pandemic hit. And they had to go virtual. They didn't enjoy it. They either took time off or they kept pressing through and, well, we're figuring it out. We're coping and I hope it'll work. I hope that I can pay off my school loans when I get out of college. I'm just coping and hoping. Wow. Oh, okay. What gifts do these people bring? These people are so savvy. They have a hacker mindset. They get behind the systems to see how things work. They also have an entrepreneurial spirit. 72% of high schoolers actually plan to be an entrepreneur someday. And these people are also cause-oriented. They like to know why, what's causing it. I mean, they have a total fresh view. Now, Gen Zers really get behind the passion and vision of an organization, the purpose behind an organization. They will purchase things from different organizations if they have a strong purpose that they believe in. So when you go to websites, you not only see mission statements anymore, but you see their purpose statement. That is speaking right to Gen Z. Do you know people in this generation? They're the youngest people that are being hired into your company. Well, then what comes after Gen Z? We're at the end of the alphabet. What comes next? These people are younger than 10 years old right now, and they will be known as the Alpha generation. Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet, so we're kind of, following the alphabet a little bit. This is the first generation that is entirely born in the 21st century. Most members of Generation Alpha are the children of Gen Y, those millennials. Okay? What happens in their growing up years? Well, we don't know yet. I mean, if these kids are 10 years old, they would have been 7 when the pandemic hit, or younger when the pandemic hit. The pandemic may be that influential happening, but it may be something different. And that's where we just have to keep living and keep watching the generation be defined. The pandemic, by the way, I mean, that affects everybody, and it will affect everybody for years because of how things have changed. So many times people say, well, the pandemic, really affected me as well, but I'm a baby boomer. Well, remember what I said in the beginning. We find values within ourselves that our grandparents had, and we embraced it. And we adapt to the world we're in. Yeah, of course the pandemic affected you because you were living through it. So we're not exempt just because it might be a defining moment for a younger generation. So what do you think? Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen Alpha? What qualities do you personally possess from each of these 3 generations? And why? What is influencing you to internalize and own these qualities? As for me, oh gosh, I'm tech savvy, just like Gen Y, and I do have a hacker mindset, just like Gen Z. That technology side, I'm a Gen Xer, so computer baby is who I am, and it's still in me. It's definitely still in me. This generation discussion, it's not over yet. Okay, I've given you some great details about 6 generations, but I'm going to do another episode next week. So make sure you tune in for episode 141. I'm going to talk about a few things. A few things is kind of hot off the press. A few things were revelations that I've had while I've been teaching this generation content. So stay tuned for that. I'm also going to talk about the curves of generations, because there's curves in everything. And we have a few curves happening here when you look at all the generations as a whole. And I'm going to talk about the fact that we have concrete for brains. And what does that have to do with generations? Well, it has to do with a lot. So until then, I want you to analyze your interactions with people this next week. How can you fully embrace them now that you know what defines their generation? How can you be more empathetic and more understanding? Find their gifts. Share that love. Appreciate their talents. We all have them. We don't want to be dismissed, right? So let's embrace. Let's collaborate. I hope that this topic is continuing to challenge your thoughts and your habits. I hope that this will help you be more efficient and fully empowered as well. Be great today, my friends. I'll see you next week for the last video in the generational series.